Hey guys, this is James from Isotropic, and in this tutorial video we are going to be making a full screen menu overlay, and we're going to be using native Oxygen Builder elements. We can see here's our complete setup, and we use a modal for our full screen menu, and the menu looks something like this, and it uses a hamburger that changes into an X and then goes away. So if you want to learn how to make this full screen Oxygen Builder menu, I invite you to follow along. Open up the tutorial, which is linked in the description below. This complete tutorial has all the code and steps you need, and this should be a good visual association with that written tutorial. So we're going to be building a native Oxygen Builder overlay menu using native Oxygen elements, meaning that we can add things like repeaters. So in the example, add in a repeater, adding images, adding big links, adding different links, setting up entrance navigation or entrance animation to our navigation and stuff like that. So stick around if you want to learn how to create your very own overlay menu. And of course, this could be styled a lot better, but this is just to show you what could be done. Okay, so for this tutorial, it's going to kind of be a live build tutorial, and we're just going to follow all the steps in this article linked in the description below. So first things first, before we even add our hamburger button, let's talk about how we're going to include this on our website. So if this was a production website, and I'm going to change this up really quickly, and instead of doing it on a page, I'm going to do it as I would do it in the real world. If this is a production website and I wanted a full screen overlay menu, I would be doing this by creating a template, and this template would be a catch-all template that includes the header, the footer, and the inner content. So here I'm going to name it header, footer, then I'm going to go to other, create catch-all, click publish, and what this does is globally applies it to all pages, all posts, and recursively applies it to all new templates. And in this header footer, I'm going to have my header footer, which is going to be globally applied and also contain the modal menu overlay. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, feel free to reach out in the comments and ask for clarification. So now I'm going to create my header and my footer really quickly so you can kind of see what's going on. If you need to skip around, feel free to use the table of contents that I'm going to have in the description of this video. But we're going to make our header, we're going to insert inner content, which is also going to pull in everything else from the site, and then our footer. So first, header is going to be created with a section. I never use the header builder. I find it to be really annoying to use. If I'm going to do overlay, if I'm going to do anything like that, I'll just make it myself. Then I'm going to add my menu and a div, and you can see that I am using Swiss Knife Pro, which is what creates the styling. That's going to be linked in the description if you want to, the styling of the builder, if you want to take a look at that. And I'm also using Hydrogen Pack, which I use for keyboard shortcuts. So we're just going to quickly, so you can see with the keyboard shortcut, I can just throw in elements without having to search for them. Very helpful, and something I just learned recently. So with Oxygen, we can just include any image URL. This isn't good for production websites because if the image goes down or if they block you from using it, then your website appears broken. But because I'm developing, I can just pull things from Google. Not really sure what the copyright situation is here, but who really cares? Okay, so here's our header. Notice that I've tagged it as a header. Now I'm going to just include inner content, and then I'm going to include a section, name it footer, and this is where all of our footer would go. And you'll see that this is my demo for the article that I've already created, so just exclude that. We'll throw in our browser mockup page instead. But hopefully you understand what I'm building here is just, oh, this is kind of annoying. Let's quickly get this working. Okay, there we go. Okay, and this browser mockup you can actually go and purchase on the link in the description below if you want to buy that. Okay, so now we have our header, and now I think you understand. Now we have content in here, and then this is our footer, and we throw in like a 4-column layout. We can use CSS grid, throw in 4 columns, div it up like that, and then we'd have all of our like footer content in there. So now let's actually begin building out our overlay menu. And to this point, we have created our catch-all template. This catch-all template applies everything that we're going to build now to the site globally. First things first, going from this article, we're adding our hamburger button. So our hamburger button, you've seen it before, you've used it before. It's this. When you click on it, it toggles the modal, it becomes an X. When you click on the X, it removes the modal and goes right back to being its old self. So this is just your standard interaction that you always use to toggle overlay menus. We're going to be using the same thing. What we want is the main functionality that we need to build here is clicking on it toggles the modal, having this remain above the modal, and then clicking on it removes it from the modal. So that's the real thing that we need to figure out here. We're going to include the hamburger button by using a industry standard way of creating hamburgers, and this is hamburgers.css. This is a collection of CSS styles that create animated hamburgers just like you see here. Very lightweight styles, and they work pretty well. The way, and you can see, very well done styles. The way we're going to include this is by literally just following our documentation. So first things first, we're going to include the hamburgers.css style sheet in our site. We can include this several different ways. If we're just doing development work and we want to test things out, we can throw in a code block, and then we can do as the documentation says and include the style sheet like this, and we'd have to change this to the link to the style sheet. In my case, what I've done is I'm using advanced scripts that's also linked below. I'm including the CSS from URL and I'm inserting it into the header of my WordPress website. To do that, I'll show you how I do that. To do that, I'm using a CDN to deliver the raw code that can be found on the GitHub. So the GitHub is the repository that has all of the CSS code. What I've done, I've gone to the hamburgers distribution, hamburgers.css, and then I'm going to go to raw, and this is just the raw style sheet that contains all the styles that we need. I'm going to copy this link. I'm going to go to statically.io, and now this is a free CDN that we can use to serve links from GitHub, and I'm just going to paste it in. I'm going to copy, and I'm either going to paste it into the advanced scripts, which is my recommended method, or I'm going to paste it into the link tag like that and click apply code. This code will not show up on the back end, I believe, so that's just something to consider. Now we're going to add the hamburger, which is step 2, and it says add the base hamburger markup, and you can see here that we have our markup right here. So I'm literally just going to copy it, and it's a button, a span, and a span. I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to create a code block, and I'm going to paste my markup here, apply the code, and you can see actually that the CSS has worked and my hamburger is now in the site. I'm just going to throw it to the right. So now this is our basic menu. When we click on it, we want it to toggle the menu overlay. When we click on it again, we want the menu overlay to close. And if we read through this tutorial article linked below, we can see a couple of things. We can see that we can easily change the animations by just taking these type of classes and replacing the standard class that you find here. So it says right now we're doing hamburger squeeze. If I wanted to change that to the elastic animation, it would just be hamburger elastic. And these are just applied by classes. So up to you on what you want to do. I'm just going to quickly save this. And now we're pretty much past the first, let me see, let's get out of here. Now we are past the first phase, the first step of creating our menu. I'm also just going to quickly change the ID of the overlying code block to ISO menu toggle, and this is a non-mandatory step. Okay, so we've done the first step. We have included our hamburger. We have included the library that creates the styling for the hamburger and the actual animation. Next up is, if I can get to here, we're gonna add our modal. So the modal is the actual overlay that we are building our menu on. And I'm just gonna add in a modal. I'm going to style it to be full screen. So you can see I'm gonna go to content, is it content styles? Nope, it's modal styles. I'm gonna go to modal styles. I'm gonna set it to be 100% wide. I'm going to go and make it 100% tall. That's gonna fill the whole screen up. I'm also gonna set it to be a live preview. So you can see now our modal is covering everything. Then I'm gonna create the trigger. The trigger is going to say, I want it to be on when a user clicks the element, and then I want that trigger element ID to be hash open modal, or ID open modal. Okay, so now when somebody clicks on any element that says open modal, it will open the modal. That is the one that builds in, that works into the functionality that we're going to build at the end of this video, which connects our hamburger that we just set up to the modal. Now you'll see that unfortunately the modal is on top of our hamburger link. So to resolve that issue, I'm going to go to the div that contains the hamburger, and I'm going to set it to have a z index of, by going to layout, I'm going to say z index 1401. A z index of anything above 1400 will place the content above the modal. The modal z index is 1400, so 1401 now has our hamburger on top of the modal. Okay, so we've created our modal. We've set it to be full screen, and now we just need to say, don't close it automatically, do not close it on the escape key, do not close it on the backdrop click. That means the only way we're going to close this thing is by calling in oxyclose modal, which is what we're going to do in step 4 of this tutorial. So now we have our modal. Now, if I followed all my steps, we're going to create our menu. There are a couple ways to do this, and I'm not going to do like a super complex menu because then the video becomes long, but I'm going to show you like how I would kind of build out a menu. And there are 3 major ways to do this, I'd say. You can use the oxygen, so you can use the menu element, and I can take it and I can make it vertical and I can place it within the modal. So let's quickly wrap it with a div, make our div 100% wide, 100% tall, padding of 20, throw it in the middle. Okay, so we can have our standard like menu set up like this, which will automatically update when the user changes things on the back end. And this could be helpful if you need your client to be able to edit content within this modal without actually having to go into the catch-all template and edit it. But you have limited styling options here. You can also take a complete 180 and go the opposite way and just add in a bunch of text. So in this case, I would go text, I would make it a big element, and I'd say home, and then maybe I'd say about, and you get the point. And then these would just become links, and this will make it a text link, and I just link it to my page, and this would be the menu, and then I would style it that way. And I could do a lot more with this method than with the standard menu method because I can style it using anything that Oxygen has to offer me. So that's another way I could go about doing that. And let's quickly we don't want to duplicate the modal, we just want to add a div. Okay, so I could do it that way too, if I could figure out how to get my div to work. Or I could do like a hybrid, and this is what I do on the production websites. I could use PHP, register a menu position in WordPress, take that menu position, insert it via a code block, and then do the associated styling with custom CSS or classes in Oxygen. And that's probably the way I would do it, just because of the styling, but I still want my client to be able to edit their stuff. Okay, and then I'm quickly styling a menu in real time just to kind of show you how I would do that. And I don't really know where my div has gone. It's kind of playing hide and seek. There we go. There's our div. So now we have all of our links on this page, and I'm going to just add all of these as links. And I'm kind of showing you how I would go about creating a production menu using the non-PHP menu method. So this means that you own your own website, you're comfortable with Oxygen, you just go in to edit your menu items when need be. And of course, I'm not going to style it for mobile, but you'd have to consider mobile. And then because we've built the menu in Oxygen, and because we now have the full screen space, the sky is our limit as to what we can actually include here. So we can include an image. We can include an image. We can include, let me add some padding here. We can include, and something that I do a lot is we can include an image. We can also include a repeater element and display our blog posts. So quickly, I could say, I don't even think I have any blog posts on this site, but I could quickly do blog title, and of course I'd use dynamic content to actually insert the content, and then I'd just add like a read more link, and hopefully you get the idea. I'd have all of my blog content show up here, so that's pretty neat and pretty unique, I'd say. And then I would also add some animation, and when I add animation on modals, and not many people know this, but when you open the modal, it will toggle the animation. So to do this first, the modal background is white. I don't want the modal background to be white, or else when it fades in, it will remove the effect of my entrance animation. So I want my divs to have color. I want this background to be transparent, and hopefully you'll be able to see why I'm doing this. And then I'm going to just go to Advanced, Effects, Animate on Scroll, set our animation type to fade in right. There we go. And then set our animation type here. Effects. Animate on scroll. Enable. Fade left. Where's our left? There we go. Okay, so now, and what I'm going to do is quickly, hopefully show you on the front end how this works. I'm going to change the trigger. Don't do this. This is just so you can view it on the front end. After specified time, 1. Okay, now let's view this on the front end, and hopefully you'll be able to understand what these animations do. Did you see that? So of course this is a fast animation, but it fades in like that. So what this is going to do is when I toggle it, it will fade in and it will like close in on itself, and you can use any of the Oxygen animations to do this effect. And let's actually make it a little more pronounced so you can see it more. And I'm just doing this by having divs inside a transparent modal. The divs have color to them, and then I just apply the animation to those divs. So let's say the animation duration is going to be 2 seconds, which is a very long animation duration, so you probably don't actually want that, but this will help you visualize what I'm doing here. Okay, so now when you toggle the modal, when you click this button, it will come in and all of the content will fade together, and we'll have our beautiful modal title. And then we'll also have our blog content. We'll have maybe an image here. We can set background images. We can do anything we want because it's an Oxygen element. The only thing we need to consider here is that this must be responsive, or else nobody will be able to navigate your website. So I'm actually going to just take this, I'm going to throw this in the middle, and we will continue with our tutorial. I'm going to go back and set our trigger to be what it actually needs to be when the user clicks open modal. Okay, and now we have our menu. So I believe this is step 3. We've created the menu. Now the final thing to do is link the menu to this button, so when you click it, the button becomes an X, the menu is toggled, and we're good to go. To do this, we're just going to use this JavaScript, and this is not my JavaScript. This is JavaScript from a talented creator from Moodworks, Machia. I think that's how you pronounce their name. I don't know. Hopefully I pronounced it right. But we actually found this on one of their websites, and it's an Oxygen website. You can get to it by the link in this article. They created this code, so it's a very smart code creation. If I needed to recreate it, I'd probably do something very similarly, but there's no point in recreating something that already exists. So we're going to use this. This is JavaScript, and it links everything together. So let me kind of explain the JavaScript, then we'll apply it to our site, and then we'll be on our way. So this JavaScript is using the for each function, which will toggle things in a specific order. The first thing is that it sees that we have our hamburger menu here. When somebody clicks on the hamburger menu, it applies the isActive class to that hamburger menu. It applies isActive to right here. So you'll see that these have 2 classes, and it will change this class to isActive. And what that does is watch up here in the corner when I apply it. It might work. Yeah, it didn't work. Oh well. Let's see. Nope, it didn't work. Oh, now it worked as I close the screen. But the isActive class makes the modal active, or makes the hamburger active. And by being active, it becomes an X. When it's not active, it reverts back to its initial state of 3 bars. And we're using the JavaScript to apply and remove this class, which you can see here. It applies the class when somebody clicks on the actual element. So, we haven't actually set it up yet, but it'll apply the isActive class. Then it will also listen, and when you click on anything that is contained within the code block, which includes our button that people will be clicking on, it will toggle our Oxygen modal. If the modal is already open, we're going to call in the built-in JavaScript function that closes the modal. And if it's not already open, we're going to simulate a click on a button that we're going to add that has the ID of open modal, which, if you remember, is the trigger for our modal to actually pop up. So essentially what this does, it connects everything together. It says when you click on this button, it becomes an X. Also, when you click on this button, it decides to pop up the modal. So you have your modal is popped up, you have the button is an X. Then when you click on it again, it closes the modal, and the button becomes your standard 3-bar menu toggle. And it goes on and on and on, and it's just an endless cycle. I think this is a really smart way of doing things, and again, this isn't my code, but this is how I would do it if it was, but there's no point in recreating code that already exists. So let's implement it on the site. I'm first going to add the actual JavaScript by just going to the site and clicking the copy button. You copy it word for word, and I'm going to go to the JavaScript tab of that code block and just throw it in. Click apply code. And now there are a couple things here. My code block is named ISO menu toggle. You'll see that that matches the ID specified here. It says ISO menu toggle. If I'm using the standard code block ID, I just need to replace this. If I'm using a custom ID, I just need to replace this with the custom ID. So that's that. And then we need to create the actual button that simulates the click. So the way this button works is there's no easy way to open programmatically an Oxygen modal. So we're kind of hacking together a solution where we're simulating a button click, and when that button is clicked, it toggles the modal to pop up. And from what I've seen, this is the best way to do it from the Facebook group. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to have our button here, and you're going to be thinking, wow, that looks absolutely terrible, and I'm going to agree with you. It looks horrible right now. I'm going to align everything the way it is. I'm going to just, you can remove all the text from here, but I'm just going to say toggle menu. I'm going to not change the URL. I'm going to keep everything standard. The only thing I'm going to change is say the ID open, and this is mandatory. I need to add this button, and I need to change the ID to say open modal, and I'll show you why. I'm going to go back. I'm going to save this page, and as soon as it decides to save on my slow local environment, I'm going to click on this button. And let's actually zoom out so everything looks, there we go. Okay, did you see what that did? That opened our modal, and now there's no function to close the modal currently, but we toggle our menu by using the button. So what we're going to do is hide this button, and when we click on this with our JavaScript, when somebody clicks on this, the JavaScript simulates a click on this, which is treated as a normal click and brings the modal up. So even if our button is hidden, which is what we're going to do right now, we're going to advanced layout, none, it still works. And now, if I did everything right, moment of truth, everything should work. So save everything. And this is the biggest moment of my life because this is a live video, and if it doesn't work, I'll be very disappointed. So we're going to click on this, our menu is going to pop up, and this is going to be an X, just like that. So now we have our full screen menu, it's popped up, and we have the functionality that this becomes an X. And then when we click on it again, it transforms back into the 3-bar setup, and it closes our modal by using the native Oxygen modal close JavaScript, like that. Modal's gone. Okay, so there we go. That's it. We've created our full screen menu, and that's how I would do it. All of the content can be found in this handy dandy document. All you need to do is copy and paste and watch this video, and that's really how it works. I think the main takeaways here is that we are using animations on this modal to animate the entrance. That's really cool. Because it's built with Oxygen, because it's built with a modal, we can use native features to add whatever styling we want. Additionally, we can also style the modal's entrance using something like Gasp, which is very popular in Oxygen, I think, and it's gaining in popularity. It's an animation library. So I'm gonna mess around by trying to create a GUI modal entrance effect. I think that could be really cool. If I can, I'll show you how to do that. But those are the main takeaways. You can easily create this menu by just following this tutorial, and it's your standard full screen menu, just like that. So now the only bug that I have found with this setup is if you click on it like a million times in 1 second, it will not work. So we're gonna see, or maybe I maybe I can't. There we go. I broke it. So now it's an X, but the modal isn't up because it got disconnected and unconnected. This isn't really an issue in that if you reload the page, it'll just revert back to the normal state, and then click on it again and it works. And anybody in their right mind isn't gonna mash on the button because it works. So that's something to consider here. The final consideration is accessibility and SEO. For SEO, I don't know if full screen menus are amazing. I'm not an SEO expert, but if I were Google, I would want to see like 5 links up here. So it may be helpful to include a menu element with your standard 5 corporate links, like that, and then also have your full screen menu like that. Maybe that might be helpful. I don't know, but it's something to think about. Also, the accessibility is something that you need to be worried about, and I didn't really consider that when building this out, but there's some documentation here regarding the accessibility. You need to label things So navigation, type, button, label, menu, navigation ID, stuff like that. Maybe add like a menu element, but it's something to consider specifically for people who need to navigate via the keyboard. We didn't add in any functionality that when you select it and hit enter it opens. We didn't set up the escape key, so those are things that you may want to do to make things keyboard accessible. So consider accessibility when you're building this. I think that's an important thing for the website. But with that being said, hopefully this was a helpful video in showing you how to create a full screen menu overlay. If you found it enjoyable and interesting and beneficial to you, feel free to subscribe to the channel. That would be great. We're almost near 1,000 subs, so let's try to hit that. And until the next video, I won't see you. In the next video, I will.